He's been called the Lord and God of algorithms, the magical nerd.
You are a numbers cruncher like there never has been one.
You are a magical statistical analyst.
A magic nerd, yeah.
And I love magic nerds.
He's the world's only box office statistician.
I believe in science. I believe in evolution. I believe in Nate Silver.
He calls the outcome of elections and he gets them right.
I am Nate Silver! Bow down to me!
He's famous for correctly predicting the outcome of the 2012 US presidential election in all 50 states when everybody else said it was too close to call.
And once again, Nate Silver completely nailed it.
And now he's facing probably the most difficult challenge of his career. So can a man whose reputation is staked on calling the outcome of elections almost exactly right pull off the same trick in Britain? I'm in New York to lure America's most celebrated statistician to Britain. He first made his name in the data-rich world of baseball, devising a system that predicts America's next star players.
Hey. Hi, how you doing?
Good to see you.
What a glorious day. Absolutely.
But his transition to the high-stakes world of political forecasting really lifted Nate to superstardom. Well, in the world of statistics, anyway. His 2012 election forecasts humiliated pollsters and pundits alike. They're no more accurate than a coin toss, he told me. Nate invited me into the Nerve Centre, or Nerd Centre, of his company 538.com. Why is it called 538?
So 538, it's a really geeky name. It's a number of votes in the Electoral College.
To become president, you need half of that plus
270
one.
of those, half plus one to become president.
Okay, yeah, it could not be a more geeky political name if you tried. Here, around 20 analysts examine numbers and more numbers all day long.
It's our journalistic duty, we think, to try and understand, explain the world, and to say how things look from the data that we're looking at.
It's data journalism, is that what it is?
For lack of
Data
a better term, for sure. Yeah.
So I've come to New York to make a documentary about data journalism. Nate made his name out of calling elections, and his business depends on getting it right. So how does he do it?
First of all, I'm not a pollster. I'm not going out there and conducting data. What I'm doing is taking polls that other people have conducted, also looking at other information, so economic conditions, demographics, how the vote went in the previous election.
So you're looking at past results, you're looking at economic data, and you're looking at current polls.
In the US context.
There's nothing secret about Nate's work. As with baseball scores, all the information is publicly available, but it's what he does with it that makes the results stand out. On election day, you said that Barack Obama had, I think it was a 90.9% chance of winning of election day, which was just so at odds with all of the other noise, wasn't it? It was everyone was saying it's too close called, and you're going, no, 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 it's 90% certain. This is complicated and hard.
If you're in the news business, you want to sell a story, right? You want to get eyeballs or clicks, and it makes for a better story when you say it's too close to call. There's a lot of blather on TV, and I believe the consumer is smart, you know, and the consumer deserves, you know, better information than what they're getting from the talking heads on TV.
With the UK election looking like it'll be the most uncertain in decades, will Nate's methods and computer models be able to reveal how we in Britain are going to vote? Time to take the man from Manhattan across the pond.
I'm from a little place called Great Britain, but I don't know if I love or hate Britain. These words upon my page written, the things that make them break Britain.
Where better to start than the jewel of the English seaside,
I've got it. Hang on,
Skegness.
I've not got it.
This parliamentary seat has always been Conservative and was held by them at the last election with a 12,000 majority.
I'm from a little place called
But UKIP is on the march here, as in many English coastal towns, following their victory in 2 by-elections last year.
Nate.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Welcome to Skegness.
Thank you, I think.
Look, it's warmer than New York.
It's beautiful.
Hey, you brought a flashy American caravan with you?
Absolutely.
Right, come and have a look.
Skegness is one of UKIP's top 3 target seats. 6 months ago, they were 20 points ahead in a local poll.
I used to come here as a kid.
If the Tories hope to win an overall majority, they have to hold this seat. In America, Nate's used to elections being a 2-horse race between the Democrats and Republicans. Over here, there's a lot more camels to choose from.
Okay, welcome to the Arabian Derby election special race for Parliament. Round the bell goes, ready, steady. And UKIP and the Tories are the leaders, then you've got Labour in 3rd, Lib Dems 4th.
We're taking this quite seriously.
Will our multi-party system make forecasting possible for Nate?
Anytime you have multiple parties, you have more dynamics that can occur.
Oh, come on!
There are a lot more ways they can move, and the complexity of the system increases quite a lot.
Nate, look at my horse! Look at my horse! Yeah! I just got another red! What? Yeah! No! That's too close to call! That's too close to call! I believe what now follows is a period of 3 weeks of negotiation between the 2 camels to potentially form a coalition government or a confidence and supply motion.
We have a recount in the United States.
Yeah.
To call the election, Nate's got to adjust to our multi-party system. He's also got to work out the voting patterns of the British public, which are very different from America.
It's so demographically driven, voting in the U.S., that if you know someone is black or Hispanic or a Christian evangelical, right, or makes a certain amount of income or lives in a certain zip code, you know an awful lot about how they're going to vote.
These kind of assumptions don't apply in Britain, so Nate needs to come face to face with some real voters. As a special treat, I'm taking Nate to a room full of number crunchers.
Nate, what's the probability of winning this?
67 on.
1 divided by the number of people in the room.
That's it.
Yeah.
1 in 5 of the population in Skegness is over 65, and more than 95% are white.
I was 1 out. Start again.
Skegness is a place of strong opinions defined by one issue above all others: immigration.
Have you thought about who you plan to vote for?
Yeah, UKIP.
So what do you find attractive about UKIP?
Well, for immigration.
Yeah.
Because there's too many people coming in.
Yeah.
And it's not England anymore, is it? They're all Polish that's working here now, aren't they, at the moment? But as long can't get jobs because there's too many people coming in.
89.
Across the constituency, there's a higher proportion of Eastern European immigrants than anywhere else in England and Wales, drawn to the area to work on the farms.
As a country, we're not dictated to, or we never were, by Europe, and that is why we fought the last war.
Did you vote for Tories 5 years ago?
Yes, I did.
And now you're going to vote for UKIP, are you?
Yes, I am. Because they're not frightened of addressing the problems that worry most Britons.
46.
Skegness has fallen on hard times. It is the most deprived seaside town in England.
This is one case where you look around, you see some shutter businesses, you see things look a bit ramshackle, so you can see why people feel as though they've been left behind.
And typically, do deprivation levels impact voting habits?
So in the American context, poverty tends to draw people toward the extreme. If you don't think the status quo is working for you, then you're not going to line up in the centrist parties you have here in the UK especially.
On the surface, it looks like there's been a shift to the extremes. UKIP's currently polling around 30% in Skegness.
This is a very good one.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the statisticians Nate's teamed up with in the UK have been drilling down through the raw data to uncover some extraordinary results.
Right now, we're talking 6 weeks out. What are the chances of UKIP winning Skegness and Boston?
Chances of UKIP winning here, about 1 in 50.
So you're saying that UKIP have a 1 in 50 chance?
Yeah.
That's not the story out there. Well, it's exciting.
I would say that there's a 90% chance that they'll end up with between 0 and 2 seats.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
And yet all this hype, all this focus, all this coverage.
We might be wrong. Sure, that's always a possibility, but at least we're trying to work from the numbers.
So, despite all the hype and the focus on immigration here, UKIP are unlikely to break through at this election. The reason? Our electoral system.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about a system that's first past the post is you have to win a given geographic area. So parties like UKIP and Lib Dems, where their support is relatively even throughout the country, underperform their vote share.
This is why the national polls we read every day can be deceptive. They don't necessarily translate down into the constituencies. Nate's keen to show me other examples of where we could be following the wrong signals. Our next stop is a traditional Liberal Democrat stronghold. Most opinion polls predict they'll be wiped out at the election, punishment for going into coalition with the Conservatives.
Nate, this is Devon, in the southwest corner of England.
Yeah.
You're a long way from Manhattan now.
Conservative candidate Peter Heaton-Jones could take the seat of Devon North off the Liberals.
If the Tories are going to stand any serious chance of forming a majority government, they have to take North Devon off the Lib Dems.
This type of seat is important to Tories. It looks to be a very close constituency here.
Right, exactly. Nate, would you like to try one of these traditional English cream teas?
Well, I will, yeah.
At the weekly cattle market in South Molton, farmers come from all over the region to sell their sheep.
That's right, let's have a guess on how much they go for when they come out, right?
Okay.
83 quid each.
Tick me over, 85.
85, I'm 83. I'm going to win!
Whoa! Is that bad?
50p out.
Half 50p out? Yeah.
Will the political views here tally with the national forecasts Nate has been crunching?
Are you a Liberal voter?
I have been traditionally, partly because of the MP we've got in this North Devon constituency. He's a Lib Dem, Nick Harvey, brilliant guy, good constituency man, so he gets my vote. Basically, I'm a Tory, so I do have a little bit of a dilemma. But I don't know the Tory guy very well, he hasn't been here very long.
That's interesting. You would be a Tory, but you love your local MP, so you vote for the Lib Dems.
I would support my local Nick Harvey MP, I really would.
Nate, it seems that here people are voting first and foremost based on local issues.
When you poll someone in a constituency, you just name the parties, and the polls don't usually name the MPs. So people might say, I like Nick Harvey. And so sometimes in the ballot booth, they'll see his name, be reminded of his name, maybe vote for him in a greater proportion than they would based on the generic ballot.
Opinion polls usually only ask which party you're going to support. But on election day, you're asked to vote for a candidate, not a party. So Nate expects a popular MP to get more votes than the polls are able to predict.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. And welcome to the Panorama quiz here at the Grove Inn.
Okay, so listen carefully. Other than Democrats and Republicans, what was the last party in the U.S. to elect a president?
That's an amazing question.
Having looked at the data, Nate believes North Devon hinges on where the disillusioned Lib Dems from the last election will cast their votes.
I voted Lib Dem last election, probably to keep the Conservatives out, and we got a Conservative government with Lib Dem help, so I've decided that I'm going to vote with my heart this time.
And go with?
Labour.
I'm just so disillusioned with their last 5 years. They had such an opportunity and they've blown it.
Why have they blown it?
They should never have gone into coalition. They should have agreed a programme in which could be supported by Liberal policies and then voted against anything that wasn't Liberal policy.
Tell me who you're going to vote for. Emily?
Green.
Green is interesting.
I think the mainstream parties are losing touch.
These voters sound like they'll desert the Lib Dems at the election, but can our polling be trusted? Nate wants me to push a little harder on their choices.
There's only two credible candidates in this constituency, aren't they, on neck and neck on election day, Lib Dems and Conservatives, realistically. What do you do then?
I'd probably vote Lib Dem.
You're getting a Conservative or a Lib Dem?
Or you can hope for something different.
Well, you can hope something different, but we can also look at the stats.
Yeah.
And
well, I think Nick Harvey's established in our constituency, and
the Lib Dem.
he's the Lib Dem guy, and I think I'd rather have him than a Tory.
It's clear there's a difference between what people say to pollsters and what they actually do on election day. Something Nate is factoring into his forecast.
So I thought the most interesting thing was talking to those voters in the pub who said, I voted for Lib Dems in 2010, I might vote for Labour or even the Green Party this time around. But then when you press them on it and ask, what if it's really close, because it is close here, they wavered a bit. And they said, well, if I knew it was close, if I knew my vote mattered, I might vote for Lib Dems after all. I don't want to make it seem like people are being deceitful, but they're being tactical.
This is a big problem with opinion polls. Tactical voting varies from one constituency to another. Our national polls struggle to adjust for this. Nate normally uses hundreds of local polls in America, polls that are still rare over here. So he needs to factor this weakness into his calculations. 250 miles north, we hit the famous mill towns of Lancashire. These neighbourhoods in towns like Bury were once the engine room of the Industrial Revolution in Britain.
Here we go, Nate. At least it's stopped raining.
Yeah.
So this is Bury Market.
And we're right in the heart of it here.
Politically, the constituency of Bury North is a tiny blot of blue in a sea of northern red. Of the 27 seats in the Greater Manchester area, 22 are Labour. This was the only Conservative gain in the region in 2010, but Labour needs to win it back.
Imagine you've got a bowl of porridge, but instead of pouring milk on it, you pour pig's blood, you add some fats and herbs and spices, and then you boil it in some skin. What do you think, Nate?
It's quite good.
Who are you going to vote for?
Nigel. Nigel? Yeah.
Farage.
I know.
Nate, I'm going to do some of my own polling. 1 minute. Excuse me, which way are you thinking of voting in the general election? Haven't got a clue. Haven't got a clue, undecided, thank you. Conservative. Conservative, right. Thank you very much.
Haven't decided.
Undecided. Now, which way are you thinking of voting in the general... No. Hello there.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not voting.
Are you too young to vote?
No, I'm 25.
Honestly, an amazing result. No, wait.
Yeah.
Sample size of 12.
It's 12.
This is really interesting, okay?
Yeah.
2 Conservative, 2 no votes, going to spoil their ballot.
Right.
8 undecideds. 8 undecided.
That's useless.
It's not useless.
Worse than useless. Not everyone in Bury is going to go to the market, right? Might be a certain type of person. They might not be a random sample of the voting base.
Are you calling 8 out of 12 people here at Bury Market liars? Is that what you're doing?
Most polls question at least 1,000 people and adjust the results to make sure they represent the voting population. But a lot questioned won't answer, or sometimes it's difficult to get the truth out of them. The only way to really know is to interrogate them in person.
Farai, so you can't decide in this marginal constituency between Labour and the Conservatives.
And you voted Labour last time.
Yeah.
You did.
My perspective has been changed because I'm a young person in business.
That sounds like you're leaning towards the Conservatives.
I probably will vote Conservative. I didn't want to say that on air, but I probably will vote Conservative.
Yeah, this is a real-life example of a shy Tory.
Well, are you embarrassed for your friends? Is this about like your friends?
Yeah, they're going to do, what's he talking about?
No, we found a real-life shy Tory. We have what's called the shy Tory factor. That's been a historical tendency for Conservatives to do better on election day than they do in the polls. And
it could be because of people like that, for example.
Does polling factor that in?
Some pollsters try to, right? They'll say, well, if you don't tell me who you're going to vote for, then I'll assume you'll vote the same way as you did last time around.
Away from the pollsters, Nate's taking me to a place where he thinks they do the best forecasts in town. Why is it that betting shops often seem to be more accurate as polls than the day-to-day polls that you get in newspapers?
Money is not the perfect motivator, but it tends to keep people more on it. So people who are actually willing to back it with money and, you know, pay a price for being wrong, lo and behold, tend to get it right a little bit more often.
Matthew, here's the big question. You presumably have people betting on who the next Prime Minister will be.
Right now, the odds are suggesting that the most likely form of government after this election is going to be a Labour minority government, led by Ed Miliband. Even though we think it's more likely the Tories will get more seats, we think the way those seats are breaking down makes it more likely that Ed Miliband can still form a government.
A Labour minority government propped up by all sorts of people.
That's what I've been betting on.
All right, there we go. Look, he's got good speed.
Time to put Nate's forecasting skills to the test.
Matthew from Ladbrokes, his prediction is that it's more likely Ed Miliband will become the Prime Minister.
I guess I'm a little skeptical. This minority government will rely on the consent of SNP, who are not well liked by voters in England, for example. I just wonder how stable that arrangement really might be.
Here in Bury, we've seen how hard it is to get a truly accurate prediction. Some pollsters compensate by factoring in past election results. In his UK forecasting, Nate's looking at historical data all the way back to the 70s. But what happens in a place where the historical data may be, ironically, out of date?
Son, I just wrote this. I thought you might like to know that I chose to vote yes, 'cause a yes vote provided hope. What the future.
Nate, this is Glasgow. More specifically, Govan. Look, there's a working shipyard. There's only 2 working yards left.
In Glasgow, people, I expect to find them very outspoken. It's a very politically aware city from what I expect to see, and so I'm curious to learn more.
Time to change how we do politics. Responsibility and independence.
Glasgow's been the spiritual home of the Labour Party for a century. You didn't have to be Nate Silver to forecast the outcome of elections here. But today we're on the brink of a political revolution, one which is galvanising the listeners to Sunny Govan Radio.
There's been a sea change up here in politics as well since the referendum. A lot of people have moved from being traditionally lifelong Labour voters to voting for SNP.
So why, give us a call and tell us why you have switched from Labour to the Scottish National Party.
Yeah. Got a text here that says, I've always been a Labour voter, but since the independence race, I have been voting SNP as they had our interests at heart. Unlike the Scottish Labour, who sold their souls to the Tories.
That sounded like an emotional reaction to me.
It does, right, but I would also argue as well that the Scottish voting public are highly educated on the debate, thanks to the referendum a few months ago.
If everyone here voted for Labour, if all the SNP voters did, Labour would have a good chance of winning a majority in Parliament.
Here on Sunny Govan Radio 103.5, here's Sleater Kenny with A New Wave.
Nate predicts very heavy losses for Labour in Scotland. Generation Yes has not gone away. In fact, membership for the SNP has quadrupled since the referendum.
Parliament in general and the political parties in general need a kick up the arse. And voting SNP and getting them a huge majority in Parliament will do that.
Alex Salmond used to complain that Scotland had a government that Scottish people didn't vote for. If the SNP end up being very influential, they're going to be governing all of us.
You're complaining because the tables are turned. There is not a party at the moment that represents normal life in the UK.
According to Nate, the SNP will become the 3rd largest party in Westminster after the election. How did they go from losing the referendum to this?
You got 45% yes vote last year, so to elect that same percentage, which translates into a very big gain of seats for the Westminster Parliament, makes a certain amount of sense.
any candidate who gets 45% of the vote in their constituency will almost certainly win the seat.
Marching to the beat of his own complacency, too tuned out to be hearing the latency.
But can 100 years of Labour history really be wiped out in a single night? Some believe the reports about the death of Scottish Labour have been greatly exaggerated.
I think it's important that Labour win this election. I think there's only one party that can stop the Tories. The SNP can only win 59 seats. They can't form a government. The uniform swing would say that the SNP will take the seat. But then you've got to have a sort of brand new, inexperienced candidate up against a very experienced sitting MP.
So the national polls in Scotland that we're looking at may well underestimate the support that local Labour MPs have.
The swing won't be uniform. The best way to get a Labour government is to vote Labour. That's pretty simple, you know.
The problem with forecasting this election is that we're in uncharted territory. Past polling results are less useful where the political landscape is dramatically shifting.
To me, the story actually is sort of centered here. The quiet revolution that's taking place both here in Scotland and in other parts of the United Kingdom, where it's no longer a two-party system, it's no longer even that close to a two-party system, really. But we're kind of off the historical map for what might happen after May 7th, I should say, where you might not only have no party with a majority, you might have no two parties that can form a majority. It's a tricky election to forecast.
Nate, end of the road, that's it. Let's speak before the election.
Absolutely.
So that was a month ago. We're now just days away from the election, and there is all sorts of speculation as to who will form the next government in that building right there. It's time for rockstar US statistician Nate Silver to give us his final numbers from New York. Nate, are you there?
Hey, man, it's been a while, yeah.
It's good to see you again. I've missed you. Nate, give me the numbers you've got as they stand today.
It's a pretty wide range still. For Conservatives, though, the center of that range is 283 seats.
Let me punch that in now, and then we can see. Look at that. There's all those blue seats in the House of Commons.
Labour, 270. SNP, 48 seats.
The story of the election, the SNP, 48. Lib Dems are on 24. DUP, 8. UKIP, just 1. And others are on 16. Nate, if these numbers were to hold steady on election day, who would form the next government?
I have no idea. Because if these numbers held steady, you'd have a case where you had Tories as the largest party, but Labour plus SNP are more than Tories plus Lib Dems. But even then, they're not a majority. They're not 325. Betting markets seem to think there will be more paths for Miliband in that case. But that's an incredibly messy outcome. There is still enormous uncertainty about who forms a government after May 7th.
So it would appear, to use Nate's own words, that we're experiencing a quiet revolution in Britain, with the two-party system that's dominated politics for a century potentially over, and smaller parties now determining who runs the House of Commons. And you can be pretty sure that if the most famous forecaster in the world says it's too close to call, then it's too close to call. If you would like to see Nate's complete forecast, you can find a link on the Panorama website.